Hey guys, welcome back to Chaos Core Tech. My name's Garrett, and today I have another 3D printer review for you. So a couple of months ago, a company reached out to me asking if I would do a review of the Borlee Min01 3D printer, and I agreed. So full disclosure, this printer was sent to me free for review. There was no money exchange, so they did not pay me, and all opinions you see in this video are 100% my own. Okay, so as you may have guessed by the name, this is what I would classify as a mini 3D printer. And that means that the build area is small, and the primary appeal of this printer is its price point. Now, this is my first experience with one of these mini 3D printers, so I was excited to try it out. I've seen several other YouTubers mess with these. One notable one is Chuck Hellebuck. I'll put a link to his channel down below. He reviews these style of mini printers. He has a few of them, and he absolutely loves them. So I was excited to try it out, and hopefully I can give sort of a different perspective on them, since I am primarily a designer of non-functional 3D objects. So with that, let's get right in and talk about this printer. As I said, you can buy this on Amazon, and at the time of recording it, it is $300 US. And it does have Amazon Prime as an option, so for you Prime members out there, you can get it fast. That's a bonus. So let's hit the highlights of the features of this printer. The build volume is 90 millimeters cubed, so it is on the smaller end of FDM machines. And it does not have a heated bed, so you'll mostly be printing PLAs. ABS and other materials that usually require heated beds will be difficult to print on this. And this printer sports a Bowden style extruder. The nozzle diameter is 0.4 millimeters. It takes 1.75 millimeter filament, and you can print to it via USB connected to your computer or through an SD card. Next, let's talk about what comes in the box. Obviously, you have the 3D printer, and they pretty much have you covered on all fronts for what you'll need to operate this printer. I was very impressed, and out of the 3 printers that I own so far, this was definitely the most extras I had seen packed into a box. So you have your basic things like, tweezers to get the extra filament without burning yourself, paint scraper to help pry off the prints. Of course, they've included a USB cable and a power supply. They've also included an SD card, and even if your computer does not have an SD card reader, they have included a little stick here. It's USB, and it can take a bunch of different types of media. We've got a micro SD card, a regular SD card, and a couple other slots on here to make it very easy to get media from your computer to this printer. I've also included most of the tools you'll need to operate this thing, including some cleaning tools to help you clean the head and remove unwanted filament. They also include a pretty good sized roll of tape to put on the bed to help the print stick. They include pliers, an extra limit switch, and even an extra nozzle, which I thought was absolutely great. It's the first printer I've had that has included that. And then, of course, you get stuff to make a filament stand, and they include a 300-gram roll of white PLA filament. Okay, so let's talk about what I like about this printer. The first thing that really jumps out to me is how sturdy it is. It seems to be very well built, and I'm not afraid to break it, which is something I worried about with that very low price point. I also really liked that it has an included LCD screen and an SD card reader on board. It just makes it very easy to get up and running without too much trouble. I also really like that they've included a handle. It does make me nervous picking up a full 3D printer by the handle on the top of it, but honestly, like I said, this feels like a very sturdy printer, and it makes it very easy to transport. You just have to pick that up and pick up the spool holder. You're good to go. And ultimately, I just felt like this was a very solid little printer. It's a very simple design, but it just seems to work, and I can appreciate that. So then let's talk about what I don't like about this printer. The obvious one for me is the bed size, but I knew what I was getting into with this printer, so I'm not even going to count that one because it's not really fair. But the absence of a heated bed can be a negative. Ultimately, I was able to get PLA to stick to this very well on the tape, so I didn't miss a heated bed, but I can see where quite a few people would like to have a heated bed, so you'll have to make your own decision about that. So really, my only 2 complaints about this thing are this. One, it doesn't have an on and off switch. I found that very, very odd. It's really not that big a deal because you just unplug the power supply from it, and it shuts off perfectly. But those little rocker switches to turn something on and off are extremely cheap. I don't know why they chose to not include one of those, but minor gripe, I still noticed it. And then the next one, possibly the bigger one, is with this simplistic design, there's not a lot of housing for the wires and the electronics and stuff like that. So things are exposed. There's wires kind of running out here and there. Actually, I'll put a little clip here of how the LCD screen sits on there. It works well, and if you're not moving it, it's fine, but there are just ribbon cables sitting there, exposed and things like that. And ultimately, it's not that big of a deal, but I just don't feel comfortable having random wires sitting out there that have the potential to get snagged here and there and things of that nature. Also, as a quick side note, I'm not a huge fan of the filament holder that they sent with it, but that's really a non-issue because you can print your own with one of these printers. So that can actually be a positive because it will encourage people to get out there and look for files, and if they can't find them, make their own, which is a good thing in my book. Okay, so let's wrap this whole thing up with a quick summary of my thoughts. I think this is a great printer, a great beginning printer for someone who's a little bit more tech savvy. You know, it works great, it's very easy to use, but the instructions aren't the best for someone who's not familiar with 3D printing. And I've looked through the Amazon reviews, and it seems like a lot of the lower star rating reviews are due to people not knowing how to operate it and the instructions not helping them out much. But me knowing how to operate a 3D printer and how to level the bed and things like that, I was able to get this thing up and running within 20 minutes of having it out of the box. But it is something that you need to be aware of because if I had not known those things, I probably would have spent hours and hours trying to figure this thing out, and it would have been a very frustrating process. So if you're thinking about getting this printer, that is something to keep in mind. But it is a great, solid little printer, so if you want something cheap to just kind of feel out if you like 3D printers or not, this is a great option because you'll be able to print a ton of cool little things. It'll introduce you to the process of taking a file, putting it through a slicer, and printing it, and ultimately it'll get you prepared to move on to a bigger 3D printer with more features. So I think that's definitely what this printer should be treated as a starting point and a stepping stone. If you're unsure about whether or not you would like 3D printing and don't want to spend a lot of money on a bigger machine, I would definitely recommend getting something like this as long as you're prepared to tinker with it a bit while you're getting your feet wet in the 3D printing space. But luckily there's a ton of videos out here on YouTube that will help you get started with printers just like these. But if you are experienced with 3D printers and have an arsenal of them already, I don't see this as a must-have for adding to your collection. But if you just want something small, like for me, I make a lot of these little maker coins to help deplete rolls of filament that are close to running out. So I would get a lot of use out of a printer like this, but not everyone's going to have a use case for this. Also, if you need a 3D printer on the go, this would be a great option. Okay guys, well, I hope you enjoyed this review and I hope it was helpful to you. Let me know down in the comments if you've seen this printer or have experience with some of these mini 3D printers. I'm always interested to see what people's opinions on things like this are. Alright guys, thanks for joining me. I'll see you next time.